first set foot on this campus, I did not yet know that I could call myself a feminist. I remember having strong feminist tendencies throughout my childhood and young adulthood. I was frequently deeply annoyed by many of my high school peers who learned quickly that the best way to get a rise out of me was to tell a racist or misogynistic joke. Extra points if they managed to fit in both racism and misogyny. I had long conversations with my friends about gender and was endlessly delighted by the strong female protagonist section of the library. My first year of college, I walked into spaces formed specifically to support women for the first time. The first place I really found myself fitting in on campus was the Women's Resource Center. The second was in Dr. Celeste Montoya's Intro to Feminism course. I learned quickly that not only could I call myself a feminist, but also that my parents were some of the most feminist people I knew, and were entirely familiar with the word, but they didn't necessarily consider themselves activist enough to use it. This was information that they had not necessarily openly shared with me, but once they did, we had all sorts of conversations around social justice, with the word feminist actually included, which led me to recognize the many feminist conversations we had had without it. On campus, I have thrived in feminist and queer spaces. I have learned that my politics follow me everywhere I go, and they are always growing and changing, just as I do. I have learned that my politics influence those around me. When I learn to think critically about media, society, and structures, and talk openly about what I am learning, I end up having wonderful conversations with my classmates and communities. Courses in women and gender studies have continued to push my politics and understandings of the world I live in, and it has been incredible to bear witness to the same changes happening in my peers. The Women and Gender Studies department doesn't just talk about the idea of intersectionality, it lives it. As women and gender studies students, interdisciplinary collaboration has built our knowledge. We have learned from not only women and gender studies, but also ethnic studies, history, LGBTQ studies, Jewish studies, political science, international affairs, sociology, and religious studies, along with many others. We have learned how to support one another as we struggle with things in and out of class. We have learned to give credit where it's due, and when to let others speak. This class has some of the most supportive individuals I have ever met. We recognize 99 problems and that none of them will be solved if we don't stop and take care of ourselves. We know also we need to take care of one another. I have seen phenomenal acts of care from this group and from our larger communities. We have learned the knowledge and the vocabulary to discuss oppression until we use it in our sleep. At least I have. Apparently Gabrielle witnessed me saying one of the frequently used feminist words in my sleep one time, and she can't remember which one it was, and for the rest of my life, I'm just going to be really curious. We have learned that our dating pool gets a little smaller every time we learn more about the insidious ways oppression can sometimes manifest itself. We have learned to bond with strangers on the bus based on the badges, patches, and buttons and stickers we put all over our bags. This is what a feminist looks like. We have learned to lodge some pretty solid statistics into our debates, linking the personal to the political to let me tell you why that thing you said is a problem. This year, we learned from Maria Poblat about calling in, which is a really wonderful practice. When you reach out to someone and say, hey, I'm so glad you're here. We have so much work to do together. It's important that we work in unison. And while we're working together, you should probably know that that thing you did, said, or action you took is a problem, and here's what you might want to do about it. And I've also done something like that before, and I know it wasn't easy to fix. So you let me know how I can help you. Or let this person over here help you out, because I'm still kind of pissed off. Okay? Thanks. I myself am still learning how to effectively call people in. I don't think I'll ever stop. I've also seen the ways this idea has filtered through our communities, and I'd like to complicate it a bit for you here. Make your process of learning visible. Make sure those around you know that you are frequently pushing yourself, often learning, and always growing. I have 3 more pieces of advice. The first is this. It is scientifically proven that you are more likely to remember the bad things people say about you than you are to remember the good things. What this boils down to is there will always be someone who is wrong on the internet. Do not read the comments unless you are getting paid for it. You are worthy hurt so much. The people on the internet will not understand that. They will say mean things. They are wrong to say those things. The second piece of advice: take care of yourself. Amanda Linsenmeyer, one of the many women I have learned to look up to on this campus, and a woman who continues to shape my politics and my understandings of myself and my interactions with the world, has repeated this metaphor to me at least 6 times, most of which were in the previous semester. Take care of yourself so you can take care of others. If you're on a plane and the oxygen masks drop, you're told to secure your own before you help the people around you. If you are passed out on the floor because you tried to help everyone else and forgot you need to breathe, you're not going to be much use to anyone. The third piece of advice is to use humor wherever you find it applicable. I remember being a first-year college student and going to dinner with my mother and her new boyfriend, who were visiting. My mother's boyfriend was so insistent at proving his chivalry to me that when I held open the door to the restaurant, he came up behind me and tried to get me to enter before him, holding the door above my head and coming a little too close. I told him that college was teaching me to open doors for myself, thanks so much. And he was so busy laughing that he forgot how important it was for him to be chivalrous, and we entered the restaurant together without further incident. I have been honored to be able to learn alongside some of the greatest feminist storytellers, activists, writers, and teachers I have ever known. I look forward to hearing about the wonderful ways you manage to bring the things you have learned here out into the world, and about the ways you continue to ensure more voices are brought to the table. Thank you, and congratulations to the class of 2014.
Next up, we have Sophia Saraj and Cameron Albert.